to Fascinating Frontiers, episode 120. It's July 3rd, 2026. Here's your space and science briefing. A planet 25 light-years away shows signs it could support liquid water on its surface. The candidate planet orbits within the conservative habitable zone of its host star. Radial velocity and transit data together suggest a radius and insolation consistent with possible surface liquid water. Follow-up spectroscopy could reveal atmospheric composition in future observing seasons. The proximity allows relatively short integration times compared with more distant targets. Additional transit observations are already scheduled on ground-based facilities. From distant worlds to the vehicles that will one day reach them, we turn to this week's major propulsion test. All 6 Raptor engines on the Starship vehicle fired together for a full minute at the Starbase test site. The test clears the path for the 13th integrated flight attempt and directly addresses questions around rapid reuse cadence. Propellant loading and engine performance data will now be reviewed before stacking proceeds. This step follows the pattern of incremental hot fire durations used in earlier vehicles. The next milestone watchers expect is rollout to the launch mount. Remember the show covered Starship on episode 118. Today's test moves the rapid reuse question forward with fresh engine performance numbers. While Starship pushes reusability forward, an older NASA telescope may soon get a commercial boost. The Catalyst Link robotic servicing spacecraft now targets no earlier than July 3 for its attempt to raise the Swift Observatory's orbit. The mission aims to extend operations for the ultraviolet and X-ray telescope that has already run more than 2 decades. Engineers completed final checks after the carrier plane reached the drop point on July 3 without a confirmed release. Success would demonstrate commercial capability to service aging astrophysics satellites. Teams will monitor telemetry immediately after any launch attempt. NASA's update on the Swift reboost shows how commercial servicing can extend the life of an observatory that has already outlived its original design. The Link spacecraft must perform a precise rendezvous and then apply a controlled thrust to raise the orbit without damaging the telescope's instruments. Success would mark the first time a privately developed vehicle has boosted a NASA astrophysics mission. Engineers are watching propellant margins and docking tolerances most closely. What remains unclear is whether similar boosts can be offered as a routine service for other aging satellites. While regulators examine re-entry effects, India's first private orbital rocket readies for flight. If every re-entering object the size of a small car were stacked end-to-end, the line would stretch from Toronto to Montreal. Each one vaporizes at roughly 80 kilometers altitude, releasing a plume of metals and oxides that spreads through the mesosphere and lower thermosphere. Those atoms can linger for months, changing the chemistry that normally destroys ozone and altering the delicate balance of noctilucent clouds. Laboratory chambers can reproduce the temperatures above 2000 degrees Celsius, yet they cannot duplicate the sheer volume of material now entering every year. The atmospheric impacts of re-entry and launch study has now been formally published on Zenodo after months of preparation. Researchers modeled how vaporized metals and particulates from returning spacecraft alter upper atmosphere chemistry. The work provides the first comprehensive European dataset on cumulative launch and re-entry emissions. Policymakers can use the findings to set future deorbit guidelines. The open question is whether this artificial layer will eventually shift global circulation patterns in ways current climate models do not yet capture. While regulators examine re-entry effects, India's first private orbital rocket readies for flight. India's first privately developed orbital rocket now has a launch window opening July 12. The Vikram 1 vehicle will carry a technology demonstration payload on its maiden flight. Success would mark the first Indian commercial orbital launch and open a new domestic launch option. Ground crews are completing final vehicle integration at the Satish Dhawan Space Center. Weather and range availability will determine the exact date within the window. Another national agency is also ramping up after a quiet period. After 6 months with limited orbital activity, the Indian Space Research Organization is preparing a series of satellite deployments. The missions will restore launch cadence and test new small satellite platforms. Payloads include Earth observation and technology demonstration spacecraft. Integration and testing at the launch site are reported to be on schedule. The upcoming flights will also validate updated ground support procedures. While rockets rise, two famous telescopes offer complementary views of a young star system. The James Webb Space Telescope captured an infrared view of the FS Tau system that pierces thick dust to show multiple bright protostars. Hubble's optical image reveals the same region with the protostar FS Tau b, its dusty disk and a cyan-colored jet of outflowing material. Dust blocks most background stars and galaxies in the Hubble frame, while Webb reveals a richer tapestry of distant galaxies behind the nebula. The paired images illustrate how different wavelengths expose distinct structures during the earliest stages of star formation. Follow-up observations will track changes in the jet over the coming months. From star formation to Earth observation contracts, Germany's Isar Aerospace wins new business. Germany's Isar Aerospace will launch a high-resolution imaging satellite built by Planet's German subsidiary. The mission demonstrates an end-to-end national capability from manufacturing through launch. Payload integration is scheduled at the German spaceport once the rocket completes qualification. Data from the spacecraft will feed commercial Earth observation services. This marks the first dedicated launch agreement between the two entities. Another startup is adapting terrestrial solar tech for orbit. The startup is now developing thin-film perovskite solar arrays specifically for large satellite constellations and orbital data centers. Early rooftop terrestrial designs have been repurposed for the vacuum and radiation environment. Laboratory tests show the cells maintain efficiency after simulated launch vibration and thermal cycling. The company expects first flight hardware within 2 years. Partnerships with constellation operators are already under discussion. While hardware evolves, NASA's Artemis II broadcast set a new viewing record. Live streams of the Artemis II mission on NASA platforms accumulated more than 149.4 million views. The continuous broadcast covered launch, lunar flyby, and splashdown without interruption. Sustained global interest remained high across every mission phase. The numbers exceed previous records for any single NASA event. Engineers are already studying viewer data to refine future broadcast formats. Remember, the show covered Artemis on episode 119. Today's streaming numbers move the outreach question forward with concrete viewer totals. For a change of pace, European satellites offer striking views of a familiar landmark. Two recent images from European satellites show the full length of the Grand Canyon in Arizona. The views capture the depth of the Colorado River Gorge and surrounding plateau topography. Data from the Sentinel series provide updated surface reflectance measurements for geological mapping. The images also serve as calibration references for future arid land studies. Additional acquisitions are planned during the upcoming monsoon season. If you prefer the night sky, the Galactic Center is well placed tonight. The Galactic Center culminates above the southern horizon shortly before midnight local time. Observers facing south under dark skies will see the dense star fields of Sagittarius. Light pollution and horizon haze remain the main obstacles for urban viewers. Binoculars or a small telescope reveal additional structure along the galactic plane. The same region will be observable again in the pre-dawn hours later this month. Looking farther back in time, a new thermodynamic model revisits black hole entropy. A new thermodynamic framework suggests black holes may obey Hawking-style laws even when their horizons are changing. The model replaces the classical area law with a quantity derived from horizon dynamics. Numerical simulations of accreting and evaporating black holes remain consistent with the revised entropy. Laboratory analogs using fluid systems are being considered to test the idea. The work could resolve tensions between quantum information and classical gravity. From theory to the samples that still anchor our lunar knowledge, Harrison Schmitt used a rake to gather walnut-sized rocks during the first Apollo 17 extravehicular activity. The samples provided some of the best preserved Highland material returned from the moon. Laboratory analysis later revealed the presence of ancient crustal fragments. The rake technique remains a reference for future robotic sampling systems. Archived footage of the collection is now used in training for Artemis crews. Finally, a long view essay asks where all this infrastructure might lead centuries from now. A new essay examines how American space capabilities might evolve over the next 250 years. It contrasts 1776 balloon flight with current orbital infrastructure and projects several plausible long-term trajectories. The piece emphasizes continuity of national investment rather than any single technology. Policy and international cooperation receive equal weight with hardware forecasts. Readers are invited to submit their own century-scale scenarios. New data keep arriving from both the oldest and newest spacecraft, plenty to keep watching. Keep an eye on the July 12 window for Vikram 1 and any updates from the Swift reboost attempt. That's Fascinating Frontiers for today. If you enjoyed this, a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify really helps new listeners find the show. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for exploring with me, and I'll see you next time. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Planetarian Daily, daily breakthroughs in science, health, and longevity. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.
Drifting softly through